All right, we will call to order this meeting of the CJCC Operations Committee on September 7th, 2022 at 11 a.m. And Sarah, do you just want to note the roll?
Yep, I've got the roll, and hopefully we'll have a couple more join us as we proceed.
Okay, then I'd look for approval of the minutes from June 1st of 2022. Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, John, second? Jim? Any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, I don't believe that we have any public comment. So, discussion about ongoing projects. Sarah.
All right. Let's see. So we've got a number of ongoing projects. So we haven't been able to meet the last couple of months. So thought we'd spend some time getting everybody up to speed on some of these wheels in motion. We'll start by the Police Treatment and Community Collaborative. Our August meeting we canceled because a group of 14 of us from the city and county attended the PTAC conference in Chicago. That's the Police Treatment and Community Collaborative. So we had Paula Winters, Human Service Director, joined us. We had our Chief Deputy Sheriff from the Sheriff's Office. We had Chief of Police Eric Atkinson. We had just a treatment, 14 people altogether. Fire department was there. Really just trying to get immersed in the understanding of all the different pathways for police treatment and community collaborative. So in the packet there was a 1-page handout that kind of visualized the police and treatment pathways. So essentially what this is an initiative. They said it's not a program, it's really an initiative to start that diversion or deflection away from the criminal justice system for folks that have substance use disorders at the front door. So we're talking about where law enforcement are out there doing their jobs, as fire are out there doing their jobs, to really treat people in a different way. So there's a number of different pathways. We have already kind of started on several of the pathways. The chief of police, he's not able to join us because they're doing some 2-day training on a platform that they're going to be using. But they have hired a behavioral health officer. He's already started. He's been working on the quick response team portion of the deflection plan. So that really is identifying maybe known substance users out in the community that would benefit from an intervention. So that really is targeted on that overdose population. So that's one of the prongs, so to speak, as far as this initiative. Then there's going to be law enforcement deflection and diversion. So really at the point of law enforcement interaction, really equipping and empowering law enforcement officers to offer a diversion or deflection. Deflection is when somebody just doesn't come into the criminal justice system at all, that they're really deflected out of that system. And a diversion is somebody's brought into the system. They would have criminal charges, but similar to the other types of diversions that we have available, if they do certain things, then those charges don't get filed, or they're offered a reduction in the charge or outcome based on their compliance with treatment. But the whole idea is to really get people into treatment and out of the criminal justice system. I want to briefly cover 4 of the, so our team was, we kind of talked about this before we went to the training. What's neat about this PTAC conference is it gives you time to kind of be in a training environment and hear best practices and hear from other jurisdictions. but then also allowed us as a team to get together and really put our action plan together. So we had Menominee Police had their CASAP grant from last year. So they've been already working ahead and had some plans in place. Now we got the state grant to bring along our sheriff's department and a behavioral health officer. So that person wasn't in place in time for this training, but they are in place now. So we're working to do some catch up. But the overall goals of the project, and again, it's not a project, it's initiative. But what we as a team identified is we wanted to improve access for patients or people to obtain the needed services. We want to create greater service capacity for community providers and law enforcement. We want to build new partnerships and strengthen longstanding relationships that we have with our CJCC partners, but also community partners. And then we want to create a sense of hope and really embed that into our partner agencies. When we're in particular talking about humanizing the people with substance use disorders, and really making a concerted effort across the board to understand addiction and how that affects people. So those were some pretty broad-based goals that we would like to put into action with our new behavioral health officers. So I mentioned our sheriff's department grant. So they have identified an officer, Rebecca Merrifield, to be the behavioral health officer. Her position, she's an investigator at this point with the sheriff's department. So her position will be backfilled. So they'll have to do some hiring to backfill that. We have the budget resolution should be on the agenda for the county board's September meeting on the 21st. That is to fully accept the funds so we can start spending down the money. So that's going ahead. We have with our Menominee Police CASAP grant, they have procured a data system. It's called Core Data and IPIS to start the process of tracking and monitoring people. So it's kind of like a case management system for that first line. So the Menominee Police have signed into that contract, and they're going through that process today and tomorrow, 2 days on-site training. At this point, I think I know Paula was there at the training, and I don't think anybody else from the call today. Paula, anything that you'd like to add from your perspective on our PTAC training?
Thank you, Sarah, so much. I think the greatest thing that I took away was not only the networking that occurred, because we really spent a lot of time talking with each other and understanding, where each of the units were, or the different types of organizations were in this process. And some were at the very beginning, like the sheriff's department, just getting into the process, myself just learning, as a new employee. And then some people were a lot farther along, I think the Menominee Police Department and those are, quite farther along in that process, and learning that it's okay that we keep bringing people along and keep, having that understanding of what this all shared meaning is about, and then really developing those goals and focus of where we're going in the future. So again, Sarah described what those goals were, but for me, that was the greatest takeaway in the training.
I think one thing that we'll have down the road is, as this gets developed. So right now, the BHOs, behavioral health officers, are focusing on the QRT, the quick response team. That's kind of a narrow focus, but it is a collaborative small team with human services, fire, and police would go out there and try to knock on doors of people that have been identified at risk for overdose. That'll be kind of a smaller, narrower scope of the program. Another part of it will be where folks can drop off their drugs or paraphernalia at the police or sheriff's office and ask for help and get some connections to treatment. And then when we're talking about the diversion or deflection We're going to need some teamwork to further define that once the behavioral health officers are ready to start tackling that. We will need buy-in from our district attorney's office and others of the criminal justice system as far as really what is our risk tolerance as far as what we're willing to offer diversion on that front end. We already have a pre-charge diversion in our DA's office. We have our treatment opportunities, a post-charge diversion. But this would really be moving it to the front end. So there's going to be some mechanics that we're going to need to work through when we're putting together that program. So I'm just putting out the ask now that we will be, we got a meeting next week to talk about some timeline, but we'll be putting out a call to folks to form a small group to help us really identify kind of the ground rules for that law enforcement diversion, really what we're willing to support across the board, so we can bring that back to this operations group. So everybody's on board, understanding what we're doing. But right now we're just really at the initial phases, but pleased to have people in place to really put these initiatives forward. So I'd be happy to address any questions on the CASAP grant. I guess it would be A1 and 2 at this point.
Sarah, could I just add a couple of things? One is that I think that one of the areas that has moved forward, which is not direct treatment intervention in a classic sense, but is really around risk reduction and prevention, is the work that the police department and related entities are doing with youth. And the police department has built an entire kind of protocol for getting youth connected to doing some early intervention, some work with some educational videos, some mentoring, a relationship with CrossFit Menominee and mentor Chippewa, and milkweed connections. And that is all showing sort of significant impact on that young population. So when you do risk assessment for adults, or well, even for youth, there are, so one of the issues that you look at is age of first arrest, and youth who are arrested at 15 or under have a higher risk of recidivism than those who are 16 and older. And so if we can sort of move some of that around and not get kids engaged in the system earlier, we're reducing their risk of future, their future risk. And then the other piece about it is that the two historic risk factors that you can change for youth are peer associations and school attendance. And all the other things are all historic, like a history of abuse or neglect, age of first arrest, those kinds of historic things that happen to kids that you can't change, but you can change peer associations and school attendance. So the work that the police department's doing, and hopefully that we're able to sort of move into the sheriff's department as well, is really aimed at that population of trying to not set them up for a future where they are more deeply involved in the system, be that in just the classic sort of criminal justice system, but also in all of those things are all things to not get kids using drugs to begin with. So that's cool. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, because it was a 14-person team who went to Chicago, we were able to fund that out of some mental health and substance abuse, mental health block grant supplement money that came through as a result of ARPA. So that allowed us to do some different things than we would typically have been able to do, because obviously that was not a cheap adventure to send everyone, but I think super valuable. And that's been sort of the nice thing about some of those extra monies, is they've allowed us to undertake some things that are one-time kinds of things, but that we would not typically have been able to afford. So that's how that got funded.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That prevention piece is very important, and it will be set up a little bit different with our sheriff's office than Menominee Police. Menominee Police have resource officers in all the schools, so they're part of the youth response team. The structure for our sheriff's office will be the behavioral health will go into the rural school or the community, the county schools to develop those relationships and pathways for at-risk youth, very similar to what we're seeing on the Menominee side. So very exciting. And as Chris kind of referenced, there's just been a market reduction in referrals coming through the juvenile justice system. And we're seeing some good outcomes. So the more we can kind of prevent that future drug use and future potential crime involvement, the better overall for our community. All right, any other thoughts or questions on the PTAC or BHO? I'm just talking in acronyms now.
I just wanted to add, I think Officer Berg, who's the behavioral health officer for the PD, will do an amazing job. He's one of the kind of a social worker / police officer, but it's sort of kind of detriment on the prosecution side. He's been really good with victims and especially victims of domestic violence. So good on one end, but I think they're a little bit lacking on, he was sort of our go-to for difficult victims who were kind of in the cycle of domestic abuse. And then also on the sheriff's side, Becca, I think will also be wonderful. But on my side too, I'm kind of like, that's a huge loss. She's been great with child sexual assaults and the sexual assault victims. And so it's sort of a loss on that side. In working with law enforcement, we have a very young law enforcement crew. Our investigators would leave Jake Mack and Brandon Scott, who do the general investigations, who will be doing child sexual assault, and they have not been in that position for very long. In other counties, usually like investigators have been law enforcement for 15, 20 years or have been investigations for a long time. So it is going to impact general investigations, in my opinion. I guess I haven't talked to the sheriff about it, but it's going to be a little bit difficult in talking to Officer Berg, the training to get be trained to be the behavioral health officer is very in-depth and time consuming, and that's going to take an investigator out of the sheriff's office time. So I'm a little bit nervous on that end. So hopefully they'll be able to fill some vacant spots.
It always is a good reminder of that ripple impact. So, or we call it like a win that there are these behavioral health officer positions. They come with a bit of a consequence, or maybe a lot of a consequence in some other areas. So I appreciate your comments about that, Andrea, because those are very real impact. Hopefully those people will be able to help grow the next round of more seasoned specialists in the system that can have that kind of approach to the various specialty populations, but that takes a long time. The only way you get to experience is through experience.
Right. And, I think part of the decision making for the behavioral health officers was this isn't an entry level job. It's really a seasoned law enforcement officer that can convey that sort of compassion, de-escalation, all sorts of advanced skills. And I think Becca will be double duty for a while, still holding that investigator's position until it's fully filled. So hopefully you won't feel that impact too much, and we get the new investigators trained and more comfortable with their new role too. But yeah, ripple effects.
All right, treatment in jail.
All right, so this is another state grant that we received to do treatment in jail. We have been able to give our first Vivitrol MAT injections in jail prior to release for people that were going back out in the community. We are looking to We were going to contract with service providers to come into jail and do certain things. But we find with just the persistent shortage of correctional officers in the jail, that our jail program director cannot just take this on as we maybe thought when we initially wrote the grant. So we are looking to hire a substance use counselor to be in the jail and be our point person for this program. It is providing those services in jail, assessment and treatment services in jail, but it's also connecting with our jail medical provider that give the medication assisted treatment. And then it'd be working with people, helping them connect to treatment and services outside of jail. So we, the jail captain and I, it took a little while, but we did get a job description questionnaire to HR. Really, this position is not like anything that we have. So they really asked to start from scratch. So we got that through the pipeline. It does take a series of time. So I did do an ask to HR to see if there's some possibility that we can maybe do a LTE or start somebody up sooner than the process of developing a new position. But until we get a real person in there, we're just doing a little bit of piecemeal. So we've had a couple of shots. We got the medication side is flowing. And as long as there's just a couple of people, our existing jail staff can make those connections. But we really do need a person in there. So we're hoping to get that going. So that's where that one stands at this point. We are doing monthly meetings with the Department of Justice for both of these projects. And I am meeting with the jail staff every 2 weeks on the project or the MAT in jail as well. But right now we're kind of at a standstill until we have a person. We've got somebody in mind, but we've got to work through the mechanics of the position. Any questions?
So the medication side is flowing. Is that like a pun or is that just...
Maybe, I don't know. But yes, the shots are flowing. And what's neat is these are individuals that raised their hand and said, I'd like to take part in that. There wasn't any pressure or saying, hey, we got this new program. Do you want to be part of it? It's really people that reached out and said, I know a little bit about it and I would like to get started. And it was for alcohol use disorder that they were interested in it. So, and that's just one of those areas that can make a real impact for those leaving jail.
Sarah, is this a full-time position?
Yes, full-time position. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions on that portion? All right. Okay, well, move right along. So for our treatment court team, which is led by Judge Peterson, we also have District Attorney Nodoff as part of that team and others. We attended, it was a Zoom training. It was something we applied for quite a while ago, and we were awarded a special training session with the National Institute of Drug Court Professionals. So we had their cadre of trainers Zoom in and provide us a 2-day training on multi-tracks, really taking your drug court and taking that model and creating it for alternate risk tracks, or alternate drugs. So typically it's high risk, meaning high risk to reoffend, and high need, meaning there's significant substance use and other needs going on. That's the target population for treatment court. This training really allowed us to look at that framework and to see if there's other subpopulations that we'd want to serve, maybe a lower risk, medium risk, or low risk, or an OWI population or some other population. So some of the outcomes, and I'm going to lean on Judge Peterson and District Attorney Nodoff to jump in and with their comments. But a couple of the outcomes that we're going to be working on was, part of it is with our treatment opportunity program. we're serving all risk levels, and it's essentially providing some of the same services as our treatment court. So that is really meeting the need for our low risk or medium risk individuals that would benefit from a structured program. So I think we all kind of reach the presumption that those folks were getting served through the top program. There was some indication that maybe we need to make our treatment court longer. It's 12 to 18 months. Most people get through 18 months or so, but we should be looking at 24-month program, a longer term program to really have sustained behavior changes beyond that initial 12 months. So these are some of the things we're going to be talking about at our next team meeting. As far as treatment with Arbor Place, so Arbor Place is our main treatment provider, and the county Human Services contracts with them to provide services. There are some gaps in that service, in that ideally, if high-risk individuals should only be with high-risk individuals in their treatment. So Arbor Place is a community treatment provider, so they provide services for everybody that just based on need, and they're assorted by need. Our drug court training is telling us we should really have them grouped by risk as well. So that's a little bit harder to tackle when they're out in the community getting those services. But another area that it's just not evidence-based is they're running groups with mixed genders. So those are some things that we're hoping to perhaps address with Paula, now that you're in your new role. Just really talk about some of the takeaways from that training as far as treatment. So that can be on your radar as far as consideration. We're so lucky to have treatment, a full service treatment provider in our community. And they provide a lot of services for a lot of people. Our drug court population is very specific. So it's hard for us to ask the community providers to do things as we need them. But if there's some areas that we can improve to be more evidence-based, especially when we're talking about, methamphetamine, trauma, the mixed genders can be a real challenge. And then some of the other takeaways is, initially we kind of went into this thinking we needed an OWI court. And a year or two ago, we really dug into the data to see, how many of these OWIs are coming through our system. We still want to revisit that. So Katie, that'll be an ask I have for you is I'll connect with you offline to dig into some data, but I think we want to revisit this. We want to look at kind of explore our current IDIP program and some of the outcomes. So that's something that is funded through Human Services, I believe, to our treatment provider that's selected to provide some of these services to the OWI population. So we want to dig in to see, are folks getting connected? Are they getting treatment? What are their outcomes? To see if we have a need, because we still have a lot of OWIs coming through, but are they really reaching the threshold of need for a specialty court, or need for really bringing them in, each week or every other week to provide services? If they're getting addressed sufficiently through the existing programs, then that's great. But it's just one of those bigger segments of the population that we do see through the criminal justice system. Jim, I'll pause for a minute for you to kind of chime in as well on that point.
Well, just to start out, I'll just have to say, we talk about sometimes with people that we're dealing with is that if we give them too many doses of treatment and programming, that's not a good thing. And I think that's sort of what happened to me. I had those 2 days of training, and then they sent me to judicial college for a full week of training the next week, and felt like I had an overload of training, so there's just so much information there. But some of the takeaways I'd just like to throw out there are, first of all, for our county board members that may not be familiar with what we're trying to do with evidence-based practices, is that, and a lot of it's common sense, really, if you think about it, but the term risk is contagious. that's why it's important not to put lower risk people in with higher risk people. And often the place where people network, you know, if they're criminally justice involved and maybe they have relatively low risk and they go to jail, they meet people that they're going to network with. And same with treatment centers, same with meeting in the probation and parole office. They actually schedule their lower risk people on different days than higher risk people. So people aren't making connections in the waiting room and things like that. But there's just a lot of that we're looking at. And so it's fairly complicated. I have to say that the multi-track training was, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it was a bit tedious because we went through line by line what we do in our program requirements and compared them to kind of the gold standard or whatever. What would you call it, Sarah? The best practices.
Yep.
So we were able to recognize. So I mean, it was really productive because I think we recognized a lot of little things that we need to look at. And for example, you know, once we terminate someone from treatment court, our protocol is that they aren't eligible to reapply for 6 months. And so the people in the lady that was facilitating, kind of way it worked, we'd have a general presentation and then we'd have this breakout room with a facilitator. And ours was a lady with a lot of experience in treatment courts from the state of Missouri. And they asked the question, well, why do you do that? And we're like, well, I don't know. And maybe that's something we will take a look at. But it, you know, and I guess it would have to be, you know, it's just there's those kind of things that we looked at. So I think it was good because our team has a lot of experience now and a lot of other trainings at treatment court. But the overall, the good news was that we look pretty good. What we're doing is pretty close to best practices in many areas. And there's always, with anything, there's room for improvement. We always strive to look at what we're doing, look at what the model is, try to be faithful to the model, because the model is recognized as an evidence-based practice that actually gets results. And it doesn't say it means it works for everybody, but it works for enough people that I think it makes a significant difference for our community and in the lives of those people that are successful when they graduate. Last night we had a family treatment court picnic, and family treatment court is being presided over by Judge Meyer. And you know, I have to say, it was just really wonderful to go there and to see the kids and the families and the difference that program has made in a number of lives where people, you know, have been reunited and are moving forward in sobriety, as opposed to moving in the direction of termination of parental rights, which is, you know, I've had some attorneys that refuse to take TPR cases because they say it's soul sucking, and that's a lot of truth in that. It's very difficult and painful, some of the things we deal with. So seeing the good side and that things can work for some, it makes it worth the effort. The good golf shot that makes you go back or whatever. At the risk of ramming a little bit, they have high risk, high needs. You got high risk, low needs, and those are like different tracks. And then you have low risk, low need, which we're serving either with a diversion program or the top program. And then you have low risk, high need, which I think we're also serving. I had an interesting discussion with Judge Levine over at Judicial College, and he's been involved with treatment courts and treatment court programs in the state from the beginning. And his background, he had been a public defender. Now he's been a judge for many years, and but very active in drafting our standards. But he was talking about their OWI court in La Crosse County, which they still run. And they're going through a process of looking at the risk so that you have many OWI offenders are low risk for other criminal activity, but high risk for getting another OWI. So, and that's a public safety concern. But if you're mixing them with high risk, you know, folks in that OWI court, because some of your OWI offenders are high risk, high needs. And so, you know, they're that kind of, you know, detail. They're using the IDA assessment as well as some other of these assessments. Thought that was interesting. So I'd like to look further at what they're doing. One of my concerns is there's a couple of counties that are doing their OWI courts, and they're, in my opinion, not, you know, we have this now mandatory minimum 8 mandatory minimum prison for 5th and 6th offense, where it wasn't that way before, and that's in a lifetime. So so they're doing some programs where they're, people aren't actually going to prison, and I don't know how you can get around that and be faithfully following the law at the same time. So I don't think we should go in that direction, certainly, because it's not a good idea. But I think it's worth taking a look. And the thought was, from my perspective, having been, one that wants to see a OWI court, is that the consequences become so severe for people. And if you have a 3rd offense, which is still a misdemeanor, the likelihood of you getting a 4th offense in a lifetime is really high. If you get a 4th offense, it's lifetime revocation of your operating privileges, felony conviction, and that's, so that's pretty serious. Again, 5th and 6th in a lifetime now from January 1 of 1989. So there are people, I sent someone to prison because I was required to under the law, that was about a 0.05 and had been sober for about 20 years, but had a number of like 4 offenses in the 1990s. And it was a very difficult thing to see, because now you talk about sending low risk people, and this person was a very low risk person, sending low risk people to the Dodge. They're going right in the mix with really high risk people. And it's, if you go and tour it, you just see that, man, oh man, what we're doing. But that, if there's changes, maybe will be made at the state level. Hopefully someone will get that idea and say, if you complete a treatment court program or something, or allow these counties, which kind of are doing I don't know how to describe it, but kind of a, slightly rogue experiment with a treatment court and working with the sheriff's department in those counties. So they have a lot of people out on EM, which the law right now would say they really should be in for that 18 months, which in any event, there's some adjustments that need to be made, but there's an area where potentially we could really make a difference in public safety. And that is the bottom line for me. Because if you prevent some of those, you may be saving lives. And so the impaired driver on the road is an extremely dangerous thing in this day and age, especially with high speeds and the interstates and so on and so forth. So, okay, so I'm rambling. Anybody have any questions on any of that information? Okay, well, thanks for listening. See, it looks like everybody's still awake. Thank you, Sarah.
You bet. Andrea, any comments that you'd like to make?
I guess I would just state, I think Dunn County is very lucky to have the treatment court team that we have. We have a seasoned staff, which is kind of the exception, not the norm. Sarah Benedict and Janae Schlossler have been doing this for quite some time. We have Arbor Place. Our probation agent is very involved in this and really wants to see people succeed. And Judge Peterson, as you can tell, lives this. He comes in on his vacation days for treatment court. So I think we're very lucky to have this program, or to have the staff. My hope is we get some more numbers and increase the number of people who are participating in the program, since we have so many staff devoted to it. Yeah, I think the training just showed me that we're doing really well, and I think we're above average, in my opinion, is way above average, actually. And sometimes those national trainings, you get some really good speakers, and we did have some really good speakers, but sometimes the challenge is every state law is different. And so saw that a little bit. We do things a little bit different here in Wisconsin based on some of the rules here and kind of what our county has decided to do with allowing OWIs, and there's that required upfront jail time. So, but it was a good training.
All right, firearm surrender.
All right, another project that we didn't quite anticipate at the beginning of the year, but came to us. And at our June meeting, we had a couple of guests from the Battered Women's Justice Project that came to us about firearms mapping. So a small team, it was myself and Lieutenant Boyle from Menominee PD attended the convening in mid-August in St. Paul. The representative from Bridge to Hope had a family emergency, so she wasn't able to attend. But really got the training part as far as mapping the system, mapping our jurisdiction. As you can recall from our last meeting, Wisconsin does have a firearm protocol. We talked through it a little bit, and it sounded like some of the pieces were solidly in place, and others might not be as connected maybe as we need. So the next steps for this is really to bring in victim voice and victim perspective. So Lieutenant Boyle and I are meeting with Bridge to Hope here in a week or so to really start that process. So we'll probably work with them to do maybe some focus groups or get some feedback from the victims to be part of our discussion, or get some people lined up. But yet this year, we would like to have a mapping with some key stakeholders in the firearm surrender process. So it certainly judges, evidence techs, the clerk of courts, some of the key folks with this, to see if there's any areas that we can form up. And we have the technical assistance of the Battered Women's Justice Project through the end of the year. So their intent was really plant the seeds, attend the convening, and they're tapping out only if we need them. So what they'd like us to do is to actually go ahead and do the mapping and see what steps we have to shore up. So I've got a request out to the judges, JAs, all three of them, to see if they can find a date. Initially, I thought we had to do this before August, so I was kind of scrambling to get that done. And they said, no, you're going to learn how to do it in August, and then you got the rest of the year to actually do it. So now we've got a little bit of knowledge. So Lieutenant Boyle and I are going to take on this project and hopefully have a map by the end of the year with a couple of areas that we can improve. But again, it sounds like the system's there. We're just going to look at some of the data and get some of the victims' perspective as well, if there's any areas that we can improve. So more to come on that at our next meeting. Any questions on that? All right.
All right. So just by way, I may have said this in the last meeting, but maybe it's a bit of stating the obvious, but I think that there's been an ebb and a flow over history of the work of the CJCC in terms of identifying projects, moving forward, then sort of wrapping up projects, and then maybe a little bit of a lull, and then taking on new projects. And so you do get a fair amount of report out now, instead of necessarily identifying new initiatives, because they've somewhat been dropping into our lap over the last 6 months to a year. And with a relatively small group, it does take a fair amount of time to coordinate and move initiatives forward. So you're getting kind of a synopsis of the things that are taking up a primary amount of time, and they don't all necessarily involve everyone, but I think as Sarah reports, they do touch a lot of pieces of the system. So we're not necessarily looking for new things to do at the moment while we focus on getting some of these other pieces up and running. But if something does come up, and we can look at that when we talk about emerging trends and opportunities, but if something does come up, please don't ever hesitate to bring it forward, and we will explore whether or not it's something we can take on. So local challenges, collaborations, and priorities, we need to do citizen member nominations for 2023 for our October meeting. And honestly, isn't it amazing we're talking about 2023? But we have 2 citizen members And one of those is Colleen Ertzbach, who is a professor at UW Stout in the criminal justice program. Okay.
Criminal justice and rehabilitation.
And our other citizen member is Shelley Jo Metzger, who's sitting here with us today. And so Sarah, do you want to speak to the needs for 2023?
Yeah, so we do have some changes that we hope to have in place shortly. Shelley Jo's been identified as our hopefully our substance use counselor in jail once that process gets moving along. That if she's an employee, then she wouldn't be able to serve as a citizen member. She's been fantastic throughout a number of years, actually, showing up and contributing to what we're doing and really having that citizen voice out there. So, somebody, a non-criminal, non-county, person. So if we have some shifts, then in Jo's position becomes available for another citizen member. I was reached out by Jamie Gibson, who works with the Bridge to Hope. She has worked with us with Stepping Stones on a number of projects. She's worked with the Pepin County CJCC on some projects down there as well. She would like to get more involved in our CJCC. So if I let her know that the timing might be right and perfect for that to get her more engaged. So we do just have to start eyeing up some citizen members that we would like to approach or consider for the for our council. They would start in January once we start a new year. So we have got two. One could be Shelley Jo to stay on if other opportunities don't develop. We could have Jamie Gibson, or there could be somebody else. So if you have somebody in mind or would like me to reach out to somebody in particular, please let me know. I can do that to see if there's interest. But at our executive meeting in October, they would be making some nominations for the citizen members for the council to vote on at their October meeting. The October meeting is the last full quarterly meeting of the year, so that's why it's done a little bit earlier than the calendar year. We also have some shifts in our leadership. So Chris Corpola has been chair of our CJCC. Her tenure is going to be coming to an end in December, which I can't believe it's already been 2 years.
2 years.
So we've got vice chair, Andrea Nodoff will be coming in as chair for a 2-year stint. And we'll have to identify a vice chair someone that's from our council that's willing to take up the challenge essentially vice chair just kind of fill in as needed, certainly get up to speed on everything. And then as the 2-year duration goes, they would become chair of the CJCC. So just really that pipeline of leadership. So I think that's something that we also need to consider. I don't know if we've got anyone interested at this point. I know I'm just planting the seed, but those are 2 positions that we'll need to fill for 2023.
Okay. So we'll address that in October. Emerging trends and opportunities, the effective methamphetamine treatment with Dr. Rawson, which I know did some morphing and changing. So
yes, unfortunately, our special Dunn County training, he's no longer able to do that. So there is a full day training in Eau Claire on September 12th. It is free training. It is being sponsored by some state groups. And Dr. Ralston, as some of my emails alluded to, he really is the preeminent expert on stimulant use disorder and treatment. So if you can catch that training in Eau Claire on Monday, it's on the 12th. It's probably worth it. If you can't, a couple of people are going to be going and hope to share the knowledge. But really just trying to, that's one of our goals this year, was to get smart about methamphetamine and smart about effective treatments. And our time with Dr. Ralston can help us get there. So hopefully we'll have some Arbor Place staff attend if they're able to. I know that Dr. Ralston was up in Barron County a couple of months ago, and there wasn't too many. We had, several Dunn County folks, but not too many. We'd like to have everybody get the training. So unfortunately, he's not able to join us, but I know there was a lot of interest across the board. I was really surprised by the number of people that were interested in joining us on the for that short training, but that's canceled. So
Is there any hope that that could be reinstated, or is that an opportunity gone?
Well, I think the in-person is gone, but we can look to do a virtual training. And it's actually a little bit easier for him to zoom in and provide that training to the group. So yes, we can look to get that rescheduled at another time.
That would be helpful. He's kind of fascinating to listen to. All right. In our last 5 minutes here, staff report. Anything, Sarah, that you wish to share?
A couple of things. So Jim already mentioned we had the Family Treatment Court picnic yesterday. It was well attended, a beautiful afternoon. It was just really pleasant. So that was nice.
Lots of babies.
Lots
were lots of
lot of
babies.
cute, happy kids. And it was just, we had a couple of squad cars out there. We had a fire truck. It was just a really nice afternoon. It was kind of a closed group. So, if you weren't there, it wasn't because we didn't want you there. We just really wanted to be, the faces that work with the Family Treatment Court folks every day, and to have it be their special day, not about us. It was about them. So, but that was a nice day. Let's see, we've got a new treatment court coordinator that's going to be starting on the 15th of September. So next week, somebody coming to us that's a licensed substance abuse counselor with a lot of experience. So we're really excited to bring that expertise in-house. And Janae Schlosser moved over to a treatment opportunity program coordinator position. So we're not losing anybody, we're gaining somebody. But certainly some shifts going on. Let's see, we've got some family treatment court and treatment court planning scheduled to do some community education. So I'm on the judge's calendar for the end of the month to start that, really wanting to just bolster the community's understanding of our treatment courts and the benefits that they provide to our community. We also got some meetings set up on opioid settlement. Paul has taken the lead on that and setting some meetings up there. And then I did get our pre-app out for a treatment opportunity program, some enhancements. So about $58,000 is what I requested for support and enhanced drug testing and enhanced services for the treatment opportunity program people. From the initial kind of pre-apps, it sounds like there will be additional funding coming our way. It just probably won't be as much as we asked, but certainly more funding that we've had in the past. So that was just the pre-app stage. The regular application will be coming out here any day now, and they'll have to be turned in before October meeting. That's why we already got the letter of support, and then that funding hopefully will be awarded before the end of the year to continue that. So just some updates there, smattering of things. Any questions for me on anything I did or did not cover?
Jim.
I was just wondering if there's a chance that training by Dr. Rawson will be recorded.
I don't know, but I'll ask. Yes, that's a good question.
All right, I would just use our last 2 minutes. I'll say we do have our next meeting is October 5th. Our next quarterly CJCC meeting is October 13th. And I would just open it up in case anyone has any other announcements or interesting information that they wish to share from their programs.
No, I just want to apologize for being extremely late. I had a meeting with Department of Justice Training and Standards that went way longer than I anticipated, that went back to back. So
And you have a new son-in-law
I have a new son-in-law. It's
and you have 2 kids off to college.
2 kids off to college, moved into college, and a new son-in-law. It's not like he's a real new son-in-law. They've been dating for 6 years, so he's been around a while. We
Just
know each other pretty
formalized.
well by this point. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else get anything?
I guess I just wanted to say thank you to Sheriff Boyd and also to the judges for being at the family court picnic yesterday, and having the fire truck and the 2 squad cards. The kids just loved them. They ate that right up, and it just really helps build relationships, especially when families are not always very appreciative of law enforcement. And throughout the years, and having the kids build that relationship, it really meant a lot. So thank you for having your officer there with the squad, and judges for being there too.
And the dog.
And the dog, yeah. It was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, that dog's a big hit.
That dog is so dang cute.
Yeah, everybody would much rather see Rookie than me. So
All right. Well, absent anything else for the good of group, I guess we will adjourn and see you next month.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
See you all next time.
Bye-bye.